Okay, I hope this is better now. Guys, can you hear us? Astrid, can you say something?
Let me see. Now is it better? I think it's now better.
Yeah, I think it's better now.
Yeah.
Anybody can tell us? Any Getsetgo coaches here who can tell us, Ashish? Is it better now? Can you hear both of us?
At least I don't hear me double speaking, so I think
Okay.
it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect. I think your audience can hear you as well. Okay, Astrid. So let's start. I'll ask you some questions. Meanwhile, the people who are viewing can join in with their questions as well. Okay.
Okay.
So my first question to you is with regards to restrictive mindset versus flexible mindset when it comes to, long-term fitness long-term sustainability of your fitness program. So what is your opinion with respect to that? What should a person have? A restrictive mindset, does that work better, or a flexible dieting mindset works better?
Okay. So in my experience, when it comes to dieting in general, it is very depending on what your personality is overall. Obviously, the majority of the people that you will meet, they're going to have more chances to fail being on a very restrictive mindset than if you have a more flexible dieting approach. So
Right.
what this means is that if you eliminate a lot of different food groups from your diet, or you say no to the things you usually enjoy, you will find that there will be a time that you no longer will be able to use your willpower and say no. You will come back to this mindset of, you know what, it's like all or nothing approach, and then you come in, like, there's a point where you no longer will have the, this sort of enough willpower to say no to the things you enjoy anymore. And then that leads to binge eating. So
Right.
basically, after being so restrictive and restrict, then you say, you know what, fuck it, I am no longer able to hold this mindset, this restriction. I really craving for this and this. I really craving for that chocolate. I want to eat that. And that becomes a problem, because then you're no longer able to feel like you're capable to continue on a diet, because all diets will mean restriction, will mean elimination of the things you enjoy. And a lot of people associate the word diet with no eating, restraining foods from your diet, or just feeling very uncomfortable periods where you're going to be starving. So in the beginning, you really want to approach a diet with your mindset of, I want to have a lifestyle change. I want to improve my relationship with food. I want to eat in a way that nourish my body, makes me feel with energy, makes me feel that I can get this sustainably for a long time and achieve results. The problem seems to be around how fast you want to achieve your goals. And the problem is coming into a dieting phase with the mind that you want to achieve these huge goals in a very short period of time. And that's the problem. When you want to achieve something that seems quite large in terms of, like, let's say I want to lose 10 kilos, and you put, let's say, a time frame of 2 months or 3 months is a very short period of time. That means you need to, if you really need to get there in that short period of time, you will have to do a lot of sacrifices. But most of the time, generally, for the majority of the people, you don't really need to go that intense, because we're not like in a bodybuilding show, or there's nothing that really asks us to be that restrictive or that, that intense in our approach, when we can definitely achieve long-term results if we just make it a little bit more sustainable and we have more strategies in place rather than just restricting foods or cutting things out of a diet, or just basically saying, you know what, I can't have this anymore. And then that leads to binge eating in the next few weeks, so in the long term. But it really comes back to the person. Some people might be good if they might feel more motivated if they start with let's say a little bit more restricted and more structured diets, so they can seem to achieve faster results that will lead to more action and more motivation. But it's really important how you periodize those sort of dieting restrictions, and you allocate maybe some diet breaks or some little refit days, so you can have that allocation of really, really strategic days of maybe higher calorie restriction, and other days where you will have more allocated of these carbohydrates, more of the calories, and you can fit in some of the things you enjoy. So it is not something that you will find as restrictive, and you can see this sort of diet approach being more sustainable over time.
So I think I can relate to the binge eating thing that you mentioned, because I competed last year in November for a bodybuilding show. And that was the first time I ever, went that intense and strict with my diet. And I could pull it off for around 4 to 5 months of prep, a very restrictive kind of lifestyle, because I was preparing for a show. And once I got off the stage, I remember I had developed this very bad relationship with food. So I used to just binge eat anything and everything that I would get on my plate, or things that I stopped eating during my prep. I would just binge eat that, and that kept on, piling up weight on me. So I can relate to that, because I think sustainable lifestyle allows you to eat all of those food items that you like in certain proportions and moderations within your calorie intake, and still allows you to get same amount of progress throughout the period of time. So that is what I. Okay. So now the second question which I have is, in India especially, people have a misconception, or rather they believe in a myth that sugar or carbohydrates, they make you fat, especially in India, because I remember when we started Getsetgo Fitness 3 years back, we were the first company in India to promote flexible dieting, sustainable dieting, right? So it was difficult for us to convince our leads and followers that, you can eat carbohydrates and still lose fat, because by that time there was a huge fad called keto that was going on. People were all following keto. And since then, the mindset has become in such a manner that people don't believe that they can lose fat if they eat a little bit of sugar or if they eat a little bit of carbohydrate. So what do you have to say for that?
Okay. Well, the carbohydrates are same as we think about the macronutrients. It's part of the macronutrients we have in our diet. We have protein, we have carbohydrates, and we have fats. And all of them are in greater or lesser proportion in our diet, depending on how we distribute our diet. But when we think about fat loss, if it's that the case or the main focus of the person, really it comes down to calorie and energy balance. It is more important to have an energy balance, and if you're trying to lose fat, you want to focus on a calorie deficit rather than what is the macronutrient distribution. Obviously, when it comes to fat loss, it sounds simple, and it's simple, but it's not easy. So what I mean is, it is not as easy, because obviously put yourself in a calorie deficit sounds simple, but when it comes to apply and put all the strategies in place, it actually makes it harder. And obviously sustaining those strategies long term as you go on a diet for losing fat, losing weight, or building muscle, whatever the goal is, it is something that requires discipline, requires consistency, requires putting everything in place that can allow that sustainability and that consistency over time. So again, it comes back down to that flexible approach, where usually when we think about carbohydrates are a macronutrient that provides you with energy, especially because it fills your muscles with glycogen that allows for better performance, especially if you're doing a performance at the gym, or you're an athlete, or you want to get better output when it comes to training at the gym, strength, all of those things. So restricting carbohydrates is not a great strategy. Some people benefit from it. If you have like very severe epilepsy, you might benefit from having a very restricted diet from carbohydrates, a more sort of a higher fat diet. If you're some kind of a very obese diabetic with a lot of chronic health conditions, being on a lower carb diet might be beneficial for a period of time, but the evidence is not really there to say that it's going to be superior if you just go below your energy you go below your energy intake, and you create a calorie deficit that allows you to lose from 5 to 10% of your body weight. That will allow you to get better results in your body blood markers. So like cholesterol is going to go down, blood pressure will go down, insulin resistance is going to go down, so you will have a better insulin sensitivity. And all of those things combined together just as a response to losing a 5 to 10% of your body weight, that will be coming from a calorie deficit, regardless of what the proportion or the distribution of this macro ratio is, fat or carbs. Obviously, we want to emphasize that protein is important, and that becomes really sort of the most important macronutrient that can definitely make a difference when it comes to fat loss and preserving lean body mass. So when we think about that, we want to try to have a high protein diet that is not just more satiating, but also protects your muscle from losing lean body mass while you're in a calorie deficit. But also it has a thermic effect, a higher thermic effect of food. So it will allow you to maintain a higher metabolic rate while you're losing fat. So there are a couple of things to bear in mind. Is like, if you think about the pyramid of what are the priorities when it comes to fat loss, the energy balance, so creating a calorie deficit, really focusing on very good protein intake, so that would be around over 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. If it's in pounds, we'll be looking at least 2 grams per pound of body weight. And when it comes to think about the macro ratio, that's pretty much as per preference, as long as your calories are in check and your protein is in check, either carbohydrates or fats, it will be something that's not going to make any difference, and that's what research is showing so far.
Okay, so is there any limit of fat intake that we should be keeping in mind to ensure healthy hormone functioning inside the body?
Yeah, so when we think about the fat intake, we really want to look at an intake that allows about 0.5 grams per kilogram body weight, or we would be looking at no less than 20% of your calories.
Overall calories.
Yeah. So we want to look at that. But also, when we think about the diets, the type of fat we choose, we want to make sure the quality of that fat is prioritized. So it is not like all saturated fats or fried foods or things like that, but more so like unsaturated fats coming from seeds, oils that are extra virgin oil, things like that, and not necessarily coming from fast food or things like that.
Okay. So now I will go to the questions that the followers have here. So the first question is from Ritu Sandesh. Ritu is also one of the Getsetgo coaching interns right now, and her question is, what measures to be taken to control the hunger pangs during PMS? what will help to stop emotional eating during PMS when there are a lot of hormonal changes?
Okay, so when it comes to PMS, it's a very tricky period because women respond to hormonal fluctuations, right? So when the PMS tends to appear in the last week of your menstrual cycle, which is the second week of the luteal phase. To make it more explain it better, we have two phases in the menstrual cycle. We have the follicular phase, which are the first 2 weeks of the menstrual cycle, and then we have the the next phase, which is the luteal phase. The luteal phase can be divided in two again. The first week of the luteal phase is the early luteal phase, and the second week is the PMS period, or the late luteal phase. In this one, all the two hormones that are most likely to affect women fluctuations in your hormones are estrogen and progesterone. Usually PMS tends to appear when these two hormones plummet down, and they drop so low that it's pretty much when this sort of crash comes into place. Usually in this last week of the menstrual cycle, you will see that they are quite high, both of them. So it means that most of the times, some of the body temperature will be higher, and there will be probably most likely for women to have like a little bit of extra cravings, because the energy expenditure might just rise a little bit. It's not like it's huge, like we can allow for 1,000 calories. It's just very little amount, a percentage that probably will take you 200 calories extra for that week, for that last week. And that's when it probably is when women feel like they are more hungry. They want to have more of these extra carbohydrates, and that's why it is really important to prioritize this sort of extra allowance of carbohydrates, or making sure you are using and managing really well that week, because tends to be very tricky, especially if your training volume is quite high, your intensity the intensity of your training is very high as well, and your recovery is very little, and your sleep is not well prioritized. So all of these things will affect hunger levels, and as well as cravings. Plus, if you already have this last week with a higher energy expenditure, you will be more likely to crave for more calories, more carbohydrates. Usually, if stress is not well managed, this is going to even further affect and impact your cravings. So it is really important to think about a holistic approach. It's not just like PMS is the culprit for you to be hungrier. It's more like, usually if you have a very intense and high volume training, you have poor recovery, you're not prioritizing good sleep, or you're not managing well your stress. And in addition to that, you have a very restrictive diet, or let's say you're dieting and that week you're not really focusing or paying attention to those cues, and you're still restricting some of these extra carbohydrates or extra calories, then you might be likely to binge, or be more likely to have these downfalls in your diet, where you're just going to go crazy about wanting to have more chocolate, or just feeling very crappy. So this is a very important thing to bear in mind.
Okay. So you mean to say that whenever people are aware that they are coming nearer to their PMS phase, especially in the last 2 weeks before because the calorie expenditure is a little higher, it is a good idea to have some buffer calories counted within your calorie intake, and the activity levels being modified according to the calorie intake, right?
I think it needs to be analyzed case by case basis.
Okay.
And I would encourage every woman to start listening to their body, because this is like a general guideline that it seems to apply to very regular women that has like this period and this menstrual cycle exactly how I explain it, but some women won't have the same response. In fact, some women seem to be pretty normal in the PMS. They don't suffer from that, so they don't really have that sort of experience, that extra craving or that crazy hormone fluctuation or emotional ups and downs. Other might suffer that very, very on the other extreme, really, really bad, and some women don't. As well as some women are not as regular as we are relating to this 4-week menstrual cycle. Some women have longer or shorter menstrual cycles length, so that can be a little bit different in those women, as well as if they are having extra hormonal therapy for anti-contraceptive, or they are around the menopause and they are under a hormone replacement therapy. That is going to make a difference in how they respond to these hormone fluctuations, because they might just be different.
Okay. So that was about PMS. Now, the next question is about training during menstrual cycles. So what is your advice to women who plan to still continue their weight training during their menstrual cycles? Should they stop it in the initial days, or should they modify the volume in such a way that they can cope up with their hormonal imbalance, or something that you advise? What is your take on it?
This is a great question, because when we think about the menstrual cycle, again, these two hormones that I just spoke about, which are estrogen and progesterone, they can take and play an important role in how you feel throughout your menstrual cycle. When I spoke about the two phases, I spoke about the follicular phase, which is the first 2 weeks of the menstrual cycle. It tends to be when progesterone is pretty low, and estrogen, which is a very strong and beautiful hormone, tends to go up slightly and goes to its peak in the second week of the follicular phase. So this hormone tends to pretty much affect your strength level in a positive way, and it usually is also like beneficial in like your mental state. So when we think about this hormone being in its increase between the, how important it is to really prioritize your higher volume and more intense training throughout these first 2 weeks. I will say there is like a bit here, because when your menstrual cycle starts and you have your period, sometimes, and this is very common, the first 3 or 4 days of the menstrual cycle can be very debilitating, painful. You feel bloated, you feel like not very much doing a lot. So it can be very depending on the person, how they feel in the first week of the menstrual cycle. But I've seen personally from my own experience that probably the first 2 days when my menstruation comes, I will not feel great. But if I go to the gym and try to do a heavy lifting, I'll feel I can get to a good PR, I can lift heavy, regardless of feeling crappy. So I might feel crappy, but I still have really good and positive strength results on outcomes from it. So the first 2 weeks, again, it depends how you feel. And obviously, if pain and cramps are affecting you, you really need to listen to your body and say, well, this is the first 2 days might just be more sort of a cardio, something softer, like maybe yoga, stretching, something more gentle. And the better you feel, the higher the volume and the intensity you can go into in the first 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks, again, we're approaching to the luteal phase. And as I said before, we're going to feel like progesterone is higher, and we tend to be more sort of sensible to fatigue, to stress. And if volume and intensity continues to be quite high, it might just be just a little bit more likely that your performance is not going to be great. However,
recovery is going to happen.
Yeah, so again, it is very dependent on case by case. Sometimes, in my personal experience, I've noted that I usually tend to be pretty good if I listen to my body, if I do my recovery days as I do, and try to pretty much prioritize strength training 3 times or 4 times a week, being mindful of how I feel, and if I don't feel well or very strong that day, I just change my training to something else. And when I feel that I have energy, I'm strong enough, or I've been eating well as well, sleeping, resting, and all of that is really well considered, then my performance can be pretty good throughout the whole month, regardless of what the stage of my menstrual cycle is. So again, it is very dependent on women. Women can be very precise and respond exactly as how I'm mentioning, according to how they feel. And some others can, if they use strategies really well throughout the menstrual cycle, they might get away with that pretty good.
Okay. So now we move to the next section, and this section is going to be all about PCOS. So we have a few questions by the viewers here, and the first question is, most of our Indian clients are worried about consuming dairy during PCOS. Is there anything right about this? Can you throw some light on this?
Yes, absolutely. So there are a lot of myths around PCOS, and I will be very clear from the very start. There's no evidence enough to suggest that dairy is bad for women with PCOS. There are some slight and recent evidence saying that if you suffer from acne, very severe acne, and your acne seems to get aggravated by consuming high-fat dairy, you could benefit from reducing high-fat dairy and moving to low-fat or fat-free dairy, but you can still have dairy in your diet as long as it's not full-fat or full cream options. But in general, when you think about dairy overall, it is anti-inflammatory, it is high protein, it's got low GI, it is good for your overall health, and has calcium, has vitamin D, has a lot of different micronutrients as well that you shouldn't be missing off just because someone told you to stop eating dairy because that aggravates PCOS or makes it harder for you to lose weight. Same goes if someone asks further. I'm just going to talk about that just right now because I think at the time is appropriate for it, is that gluten-free is not going to make any difference, or going gluten-free, because again, there's no evidence to say gluten is going to affect your weight loss, and this is like it's been debunked over and over. You're not going to see any difference. In fact, when we think about the people, the rate of people that go into a gluten-free diet and they tend to think that it's healthier, they might not even see any meaningful changes, especially if we're talking about PCOS women. There's not going to be much difference, and that's not going to cure the PCOS or reduce the insulin resistance at all. So again, it comes back down to the same principles I've just spoken about before. Energy balance, calorie deficit, a high protein diet, especially for women with PCOS, we want to include a higher fiber diet with more sort of whole grain, more vegetables, more fibrous vegetables, and that is going to make a much more impact and more difference than if we just start talking about cutting things out from your diet. Again, there's a huge research behind this saying that women, especially with PCOS, tend to be at higher risk from binge eating disorders because of these ongoing suggestions and everyone giving their opinion on how women with PCOS should be eating. And you better just take out inflammatory foods from your diet. Just better off cutting all the sugar and cut all carbohydrates. Just go keto and eat organic, because organic is better than conventional foods. And just go gluten-free and go vegan. Better don't eat anything. Just it's better if you die already. So all of these salutary ideas and suggestions are just very out of point and just make women more confused of what they should be really focusing on. And it is very simple. Just improve your diet quality, enhance your lifestyle, engage with more physical activity, strength training, be consistent with it, and improve your relationship with food, and that's going to go smoothly for you to lose weight and reduce any symptoms that are associated with PCOS.
Okay. So I'm just going to summarize what Astrid just mentioned about PCOS nutrition, because this is one of the most asked questions on this session with regards to what should be the dietary restrictions or considerations for ladies suffering with PCOS. So like Astrid said, there is no such restrictions over anything when it comes to PCOS. If it comes to weight loss, you just have to control your calories, increase your protein intake, and there is some evidence that a high fiber diet can help people with PCOS, right, to improve their insulin sensitivity and to train better and to feel better, right? So these are the points that summarizes the recommendations, dietary recommendations for people suffering with PCOS. Now, this question was also important because this session is being attended by the coaching interns at Getsetgo. So they had these questions with regards to what are the dietary recommendations for certain different conditions, right? So I hope everybody has gotten the answer now that there is no such restrictions. It's all about controlling your calories, improving your relationship with food, increasing your protein intake, and having high fiber diet. Okay? Okay, fine. So now we move to the next question, and this question is about how, okay, this is a very, again, it's a very same question: how to lose weight when a woman is suffering from PCOS, what food must be avoided, and what to include in the diet. This has already been answered, Manu. So if you just look at the video again, you will get the answer. What is your view on workout during menstruation? That is also answered.
I think someone asked something about gut health and how it relates to nutrition. I can't see again the question, but I think someone else asked about how gut health can be somehow affecting your diet and your overall health. And this comes to, again, this is a very hot topic, and I guess gut health plays an important role, especially when we think about the foods we eat and how your nutrition is overall, right? But when it comes to fat loss or overall well-being, you really want to come back to the same principles we just been speaking about. That is a really good diverse diet, especially coming from plant-based options. It doesn't mean that you have to go vegan for it, but if you have at least 4 to 5 serves of vegetables and fruits a day, you will get a lot of benefit from it, and your gut bacteria will benefit from it. Why? Because they are the principal sources of fiber, and fiber is pretty much the way your gut ferments some of that fiber, and your gut bacteria uses that fiber to nourish themselves, and using probably as we speak about this, fiber can be divided in soluble and insoluble, and some of these fibers that are not well digested, they are used by your own gut bacteria to produce other elements that are going to benefit your own gut, as well as is going to allow for a better diversity of your gut bacteria. So research has shown that the better and the more the diversity of your gut bacteria and the healthy bacteria in your gut is going to be much more beneficial for your overall health, as well as for the connection from your gut bacteria to your brain and your mental health. So it is a very dense and long topic to discuss, but I think definitely can be something that you might find more information about in my feed, and we can always do another live to just speak about the different type of fibers and the prebiotics, probiotics, and things like that.
So next question we have is from somebody called Siri Bandi. And the question is, I have lost weight gradually over the past year, but I feel that it isn't in a healthy way. I feel weak very easily. I want to improve my immune system, and I have hypothyroidism too. What are the best foods?
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. So there's a person who has lost weight gradually over the past 1 year, but she feels that the weight loss is not done in a healthy way. She feels very weak and she wants to improve her immune system and is also suffering from hypothyroidism. What are the best foods?
Okay, so there is no best foods, okay? So there are no superfoods, or there's no magic answer to this. It all comes back down to really look at what is your diet looking like and for how long have you been dieting as well. If you suffer from hypothyroidism for just like it's been diagnosed recently, or it's something that you think it is going on because of dieting, it is a hard question to answer, because I don't really know how do you know, or where did you started you got diagnosed by hypothyroidism. But let's suppose you have hypothyroidism all this time and you lost weight for a period of time, but you feel like you've done it in a way that wasn't great. It is really not too late to just start doing better options and better choices. So I would say stop trying to keep losing weight for a while. Just start a diet break. Try to reintroduce any food that you might have cut out of your diet. Try to make sure your diet is full of vegetables, a lot of different options when it comes to carbohydrates. So you have whole grains, legumes, seeds, all of that in your diet in an appropriate amounts and proportions. And just make sure you're eating at your current maintenance calories. So if you can't eat at your current maintenance calories for a while, just try to make sure you listen to your body. Okay, there is something that is called biofeedback that is going to give you really good insights of how your body is feeling. So you want to look at your sleep, hunger, cravings, mood, and energy. So you want to look at these 5 things and really make sure all of those things are in check. If you currently feel like your mood is really poor, you're very cranky, your sleep is really low, you're not sleeping well, your energy is pretty low as well, your hunger levels are really high, cravings are high, your biofeedback is telling you this is not fine, this is not good, and you really need to put that in check again. Once you're sleeping better, your cravings are in check, your hunger goes back to normal, then you might start thinking that it is a better time for you to start reintroducing energy restriction or a calorie deficit and restart a dieting phase. But at the moment, I would suggest you stop dieting and focus on other things. Focus on non-weight related victories. Try to focus on improving your performance at the gym, improving strength. Make sure probably it is time for you to start reconnecting with mindful eating, with your body response, how it feels, listening to your hunger cues, and be a little bit more mindful and practice some of these gentle nutrition on yourself. So when all of that biofeedback is in check, you might be able to feel ready to do another period of fat loss and continue your fat loss if that's something that you would want to continue on doing.
Okay. So next question we have from Tim Aben Abraham, and the question is, do you think bacteria in our gut produce vitamins? There is some research which supports that, but I think it's not enough. I want to know your opinion.
Okay, so I think that's the question I just answered previously.
Oh, okay, fine,
Yeah.
fine. Okay, so next question is from a person called Manu, and the question is PCOD and PCOS the same thing?
Yeah, it's just like it's being defined differently from different agencies, but it's the same thing.
Okay.
I guess they're trying to say PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and others would say polycystic ovarian disorder, but it's the same thing.
It's the same thing, yeah. Okay. So the next question I have is, this is my question from on behalf of the audience that we have right now. So there is a huge myth again, especially towards this side of the world, that, you know, if women lift weight, they are going to look manly or they're going to put muscles like men. Although we have, you know, done enough posts in the past saying that, you know, women do not have enough testosterone like men to put on that much of muscle mass, but then still they do not believe it. So I think it would be good if they hear it from somebody like you who's been into gym for a long period of time now.
Yes, absolutely. So you're completely right. Women have a very small amount of testosterone and not enough to just get bulky from lifting weights and not even really heavy weights. If that happens, we really be looking at a lot of women currently being really, really big, and that's not the case. The thing is, it is actually the opposite. Women, and especially lifting weights and resistance training, tends to have a really positive effect on body composition. And usually when you see someone that has never lifted weights, if it's especially when talking about women, that come to gym, start a lifting program, you see how beautiful the body becomes as they consistently go and train, because they are enhancing body recomposition. It not necessarily mean that it's going to mean weight loss, but it's meaning that you're changing your body shape regardless of regardless whether you're losing weight or not, your body changes. And you also see that the effect of doing exercise resistance training is really good for your mental health and your confidence. Like I've never seen anyone complaining because they got stronger. No one complains about getting stronger or just being able to lift 50 or 100 kilos of a deadlift. It is something that is so encouraging, so positive, so empowering, that even when we think about women, they need to start lifting weights, because there's one more thing they can focus on that doesn't mean losing weight, but actually getting stronger, getting into the gym and lifting consistently something that they can feel like they have the power to do it. So usually, like when we think about the modern society, we think that women has to be this person that has to be using or wearing a dress and be very thin and be like this little princess. And that's not necessarily true, okay? Women now can have the role of, I can do things like everyone else. And you don't have to wear dresses to be more feminist or look more like beautiful women. Women can look beautiful regardless of what they are. Everything is here, and how confident you are showing up and how you do things and how much you believe how beautiful you are. And that's something that only you need to project on other people, not thinking that if you don't fit into that stereotype of what women should be looking like, then you're not going to be beautiful enough. So every single woman that is listening right now, you are beautiful enough, and everything is in here, and you really want to project that to the world. No one really gives a shit, and I'm saying it like this, whether you look like that or whether you look like other women. Everything comes back to you projecting yourself to the world. And that's the main thing that I want you to focus on. It's not about what people think about you, because we give too much power to other people, to what could they think about me if I am dressing this way, or if I do this, or if I do that. I really want you to focus on what makes you feel good, what makes you feel happy, what makes you do the things you enjoy. And if you enjoy lifting weights, go and start lifting the weights. Don't really pay attention to what other people think or what is the opinion, because people will have opinions all the time, whether they're positive or not positive. They always are going to criticize you anyways. So if that's going to be the case, then why just paying so much attention to it? Just do what makes you happy, feel confident, and makes you just feel like you're $1 million.
Right. So now we move to the last topic, and this topic is about females who are either pregnant right now or just delivered a baby. So what do you think should be the approach when it comes to pregnant women and women who have just delivered a baby? How their nutrition should be? Should they be including some additional calories because they are feeding their babies? Should they consider training as an option to keep their lifestyle active? What is your opinion?
So this is an important question, because I get a lot of questions about this all the time. And women, while they're pregnant, they can practice gentle activity according to how they feel, and obviously it will depend on their training history. If they've been training for a long time, maybe they might be able to keep some of these current exercise they're doing until they get closer to they giving birth. But overall, if you've never done exercise and then you suddenly start deciding that you wanted to exercise while pregnant, that's fine. But you really need to pay attention to what are the things that make you feel good, what are things that might be too strenuous for your level or your capacity, and be very, very careful how you progress with that. There's a very important focus to pay attention on the strengthening of your core and your pelvis muscles. So you really want to focus on those exercises mostly all around your pregnancy and even after your pregnancy, because you want to make sure, especially if you go on a natural birth, you really want to make sure you strengthen those muscles back after giving birth. So this is an important point in the sense of exercise and physical activity. And even after postpartum, you want to continue listening to your body, say the same, how you feel about going and exercise. You really want to prioritize and progressively incorporate exercise as you feel more recovered. But this is not a period for losing weight, okay? We need to really focus on what's important right now. My priority is my baby, how I feel, how I am looking after my baby, and after giving birth is the same thing. Probably the first 6 to 8 months is going to be more about self-care, how you practice your gentle nutrition, but you will have your priority and your focus will be getting this connection with your baby, and how important it is to give that protection, that connection with him. And as you go, you can start incorporating other things. You asked an important question about the calories, and you will find that when you are giving to your baby your food, you're doing, I forgot the name now.
Breastfeeding.
Yeah, that one. Sorry about that. When you're breastfeeding, you really want to eating adequately. You're eating enough. It doesn't mean like you're breastfeeding and you're eating for two. It's not you're eating for two. Probably the amount of calories you might be needing above your maintenance calories is between 300 and 500 calories on top of the normal thing. But it is very individual, and you really need to be looking at quality of food, your nutrition, and be more an intuitive approach. Because that period is going to be stressful enough to, on top of that, tracking calories and things like that. And you don't really want to focus on fat loss, but also it's not time for you to go crazy and, I'm just going to eat whatever because I am eating for two. I'm breastfeeding, so I have the right to eat more. So it's not like that. You really want to be mindful, practice mindful eating. Again, portion sizes, 3 meals a day, maybe 2 snacks, something that you can focus on having a structure, not erratic eating. And make sure you're including protein in all your meals, adequate amount of vegetables, carbohydrates that are high fiber carbohydrates, and really focus and practice gentle nutrition rather than focusing on fat loss. After the first year, after giving birth, you might be able to start refocusing on a fat loss phase. So that's what I would say. Once you're transitioning from breastfeeding to formula, or you stopped that breastfeeding period, then you can start a dieting phase for losing fat in a sustainable manner. It's not like you're going to go on a crazy fat loss diet to lose all the weight you might have gained since you fell pregnant. You really want to go step by step, slowly. It's going to take a while, but we need to be patient and knowing that it's not going to be any magic solution, but you're going to get results if you're consistent with some changes. And it's going to be much easier if from the very beginning, even when you fall pregnant, you look after your diet, your nutrition is on point, you're still practicing gentle nutrition, you exercise regularly according to your body, what your body allows you to do, and that's going to allow you to continue after your pregnancy. If you can continue with those habits, it's going to make much easier going back on track once you're stop breastfeeding and start deciding to recover your pre-pregnancy weight.
Okay. So I'll just take one last question now. As you know that the COVID-19 outbreak is viral around the world. So in 5 minutes in India, we have a mass citizen curfew going on, which means that everybody is going to come out on their balconies and their doors, and they're going to clap or they're going to ring bell or something in order to thank. I think you can already hear the sound. People have already started playing that. So people are thanking everybody who is actively involved in medical and government-related work with respect to fighting coronavirus. So the last question is, since coronavirus has started, there are a lot of companies who are coming out with products that claim to, boost your immunity. And I even did a video yesterday saying that there is nothing like that. No products can boost your immunity. So what is your opinion on this? So is there actually any product that can detoxify your body or that can improve your immune system? Do you believe in that, or what does the evidence say?
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with you. There's no evidence that there will be products that are going to improve and make you completely immune. You are definitely at risk as everyone else. Obviously, every person will have their own immune system built, and some people will have a good response, some others not as much. But the main thing that will allow you to have a really good immune system is proper sleep, proper stress management, and adequate nutrition. Again, same principles. A high protein diet, really rich in vegetables, whole grains, fiber, making sure you have a really good diversity in your gut bacteria, and all of that is going to get you a better immune response. If you fall if you got sick, your immune system is going to respond much better. But there's no such as a magic product or a magic pill that's going to boost your immune system, or any sort of diet. Going keto is not going to make you immune, or going to carnivore diet is not going to make you invincible. So it is all the same basic principles, and following the right sources of information.
Okay. And just one more thing to mention to all the audience. This also includes meat. Meat also does not, cause coronavirus contamination in you. So, Astrid, it's fine to have meat also, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I just ate, today I ate meat, and it was amazing. Tastes good.
Great. So I think that was a great session. Now the loud noise is going to just increase here, because the people are going mad here, because the Prime Minister just gave a green flag to making nuisance for 5 minutes. So everybody is out on their balcony. So Astrid, thank you so much. That was a great session here. And we hope to have you again with very specific topics like this. And this was very informative from your side. And on behalf of Getsetgo and all our followers and coaches and employees, I thank you. And